Good morning. I've got the best morning. And the funny thing is, see, I took a shower and didn't do my hair, so it's like super flat. But I worked my butt off this week. It's very cute. It was a very busy week. And I came home yesterday and I wanted to stay up and everything. And my husband was like, take a nap and then we'll have a nice evening. And I went to lay down. I was like, I may never get back up. And I didn't. And I got a great night of rest, which is really fantastic and probably what I needed. I woke up this morning, I slept in, I made love to my husband, I'm having coffee. We've been having some great meaty debate out on the patio for a couple of hours, watching the little critters, the mice I like it. Bunnies and squirrels and birds eat breakfast and all my beautiful flowers around I've planted, while having a delicious cup of coffee in my bee mug, no less, from the Golden Bee by the Broadmoor, where my hubby and I ate after we got married. And can you believe it's been almost a year since I've been doing this? I made this random video last year about happiness and realizing that happy people are the most powerful people in the world, and that's really what the world needs. I'll post it, why not? And then I realized afterwards, do I know what happiness is? I thought I was happy. But I think I realized I wasn't totally happy. And I wanted to know what that was about. And as I began to poke around and explore, I began to find a lot of evidence to say that happiness is actually the most important thing. And then I started to look around at our country and realize everyone's really depressed and medicated and struggling. I've struggled with depression and medication, all these different things in my life, and sort of this crisis. And so what is it about? So I've started to dig around in the spiritual realm because I began to realize that I was sort of as part of a religious thought process of a big portion of our country, which is a Christian conservative. And I was raised in that, and I was homeschooled, and began to realize that happiness didn't really make the list for what was important. But if I were to look at what was out in the world, I would say, if we have a really depressed culture, what's out? Being happy. But why? We have so much. And so different things started to pop up on my YouTube feed and studying and, realizing that, then I started getting to Alan Watts, who said something that really caught my attention, which he said the most important thing for the world is that in the West, we begin to learn how to enjoy ourselves, have pleasure, have leisure, how to relax. Otherwise, we're going to blow this world up. I was like, well, that's oddly in line with what I've been thinking. And I've always studied Abraham and Course in Miracles and stuff, but always for like 10 years I've studied them, not always. But this body of work also seems to follow that. And so I've sort of been led on this trail that ended up being a little more spiritual in nature than I expected. Part of that is because I have a lot to say politically and professionally. And I don't need to do as much research for that. So it's kind of funny because it'd be a lot faster to pop up like a YouTube on how to be an effective manager. Like that I could pop off about all day. And I could appear for professional and knowing it all. This is such an interesting space because really I come here being like this, me in my morning with my coffee, studying more about spirituality, sharing my pains and my hurts and my struggles, when I could paint a very different picture of my successes. And I think I give flashes of my potentiality here or my knowledge, but for the most part, I'm just kind of being silly. Part of that is because there's a humility piece. It's a lot easier in many ways to come out looking like a badass doing it as a business because there's this sort of separation. You're always kind of coming with a persona because you're trying to present an image or a brand, because I'm trying to sell it, because I'm trying to develop a business. That's amazing. It's wonderful. My go-to with this one has been a little different, where I'm really trying to just be with you. And I know it's not a live video because I don't have the guts for a live video yet. I don't know what I'll talk about, and why would anyone want to sit with me while I do this? This way, if it's not live, you can watch it whenever, but maybe some people would like to sit with me. But I've really been focusing on expanding it's not really a spiritual understanding. That's sort of like a buzzword. What is it really? As we've touched on here, what I'm discovering is we've sort of always had this idea of being three parts, right? Mind, body, spirit. And what I'm discovering is mind, spirit, and emotion are kind of all the same thing. And it's all vibration, which is really something we're very well versed in physics now. We're very well aware everything is vibration. We're mostly space. The conversation is a perfect time to start because for so long we thought we were made out of goo. And so law of attraction, all that stuff doesn't make a lot of logical, scientific sense until you get into we're waves and particles. And we know that. We know that our senses are picking up on cajillion amounts of data, but yet funneling it down. We know our brain and our ears and eyes are not just interpreting, but filtering mechanisms. We're not actually seeing what's really there. We're seeing our perception of it. If we knew that all of us were sort of sharing and connected in ways we don't realize, there is a one mind and an individual mind, sort of like there's the internet, which is a collective space that people can join, and you also have an individual computer, right? They work together. Your own mind and the one mind would be very similar. And most people, we've sort of agreed without knowing on how we perceive things. So we're perceiving things in a lot of the same ways. Our filtering mechanisms work in a lot of the same ways, but our beliefs do change what's filtered and what we see and experience. And that's where we get wonky because we really like to think the physical is a set reality, but we keep bumping up against, I mean, look at what won the Nobel Prize this year. It was like, it's all about by location, how things that are connected or were once connected can be separated. And no matter how far away they are from each other, when something happens to one, it also happens to the other reacts like it happened to them. Like if you stab one cell, the one that was connected to it will react like it was also stabbed. This is something they were exploring, and what the bleep do we know anyway, way back when that came out, which is fascinating and has to do with quantum physics, which is really probably more reality. So the more we try to think things are static in this reality, the more our scientific studies are showing us that they are not. It would become even more logical if we realized that our own power of perception, because of its creative nature, was affecting what we were looking at. If a researcher was versed with that knowledge, which has been specifically removed from his mind, he's supposed to get rid of his personal bias. We've told him he can't. You are trained that you can't get rid of your personal bias. What we are not told is your mind is actually affecting what you see. If you knew that, you would know you really couldn't remove your personal bias. And we would know that everything we study in a cell is a result. It's a result of the consciousness that was operating that body of cells, whatever that was. And it's a result of the consciousness studying it. And so that's why 20% of people can survive a disease and 80% die. And you shouldn't even be quoting those stats, because just because one person died from it doesn't mean anyone else has to. It's that we're told that we are, and we can't overcome it, that causes that to become true for us, which then affects our cellular structure and causes it to become true, and then we become just another observed result. If we were taught that based on our own thought process and emotional space, we can adapt what is happening in our bodies and our cellular structures, gosh, we sure would be more empowered. If I was told, so right now I'm told I have to go to a doctor and get it approved by my insurance, and they have to do all these tests, and then maybe it'll work for me. Imagine how much more effective it would be to say your body already has everything it needs. You need to change how you're thinking and how you're feeling. You're depressed, you're upset, you're angry, you're resentful. You've got all these different things going on. You're blaming everyone. Like, we need to pull all your accountability in-house, get you all your power back, because as long as you're blaming other people, you're giving all your power for healing or whatever it is to other people. You've got to pull that back because you don't have any power as long as you're giving it away. And we don't realize when we blame people, we're giving our power away. We've not made those things synonymous, but when you blame, you're giving that person the power for your life, because you're saying, I didn't get something I wanted because of them. Here's your power for making your life happen. And you just went, here you go. Why don't you take that? I don't even like you, but I think you should have all the power for making my life what it means to be, because that's more comfortable for me, because this is an unconscious exchange. But somewhere deep down, I am aware that I do have the power to correct that, and I'm giving it to you so I don't have to take accountability, but it doesn't really work because truthfully, I know I'm kind of responsible for it anyway. But that's not a conscious exchange. We love to blame other people and think it has nothing to do with us. And we don't realize it's giving our power away, right? Think of how many people right now are sitting around going, that world's going to hell in a handbasket, and there's not a thing I can do about it. So you're giving all your power to affect a good future for humanity to what? You can't do anything about it. It's just going to happen. You have no power, right? And you don't realize that by you believing that and focusing on the future of the world in that way, you have just helped it end. You are contributing to the world going to hell in a handbasket because you believe it's true. That knowledge, which is so apparent, and once you become sort of keyed into it, you go, all the evidence for the world is telling us what I'm saying. We just really don't want to take accountability, which I also understand, having made a mess of quite a few things in my life at times. I understand the pain of taking accountability. I don't want it a lot of the time. However, it still belongs to me. And if we knew these things, if we knew like, wow, so if I believe my body has the power to heal and overcome whatever it comes up against, it will. Doesn't that sound a lot simpler? Or getting happy, or addressing what keeps me from being happy, changing my life so I feel good when I get up in the morning. Hard? Sometimes. Not necessarily easy. Easier than going to a doctor and asking for medication and insurance and surgery and treatment and all the things that can come with it. I think we're very clearly seeing that the doctor path is easier, but it is much more painful. And so we are choosing the easier, more painful path because it's hard to change who we are. It's hard to believe we could actually be accountable for what's happening in our lives and that we're the ones who are holding ourselves back from all good. And I've seen it in the healing arena. I already know because of my own experience. I don't have a lot of this nailed out, but I do in the world of health. So I believe my body can overcome anything. I've never cared about germs. I think because I was around a lot of people who are very OCD about germs, it was never important to me. It was very important to them. And there was never a difference. Like my brother would wash his hands 45 million times a day. I barely did. And I never got sick. He got sick more than me. So, and I never paid attention to it growing up. In fact, it wasn't even really noticeable until COVID. And everyone was so afraid of getting COVID. I was the only person that wasn't. And I went out and got a job and worked around hundreds of people a day. And I have since COVID started, and I've never had it. And I haven't gotten a shot. So if I did get it, I fought it off. And I have done this in many ways. Like I'm immune to strep. I don't know how you can really be immune to strep because strep is sort of like an infection that gets lost in itself in your body. But I can be around people with strep and I'm the only person that doesn't get it. But see, I don't think I get sick. My family is very vulnerable to herpes virus, for example, whether it's of the lip or of the body. I am not. Everyone in my family gets cold sores. I do not. So I truly believe that I have empowered my immune system and believe in the power of my immune system, and it just fights things off. My guess would be if someone did a panel, I'm immune to a lot more than people realize. And I only discovered that when I went to go get a hepatitis shot vaccine because I was going to China a lot. I don't have a problem with vaccines, but the COVID shot isn't a vaccine. I don't care if you go get it. Just don't tell me I have to. That's all. I've worked with the FDA. I know a lot about compliance and submission and approvals, and I didn't like how they handled that process. That's it. I went in to get a vaccine for hepatitis. I had a good doctor at the time. He's like, we're going to test you for immunity before we give you the shot. We don't want to give you a shot you don't need. And I came back immune to one of the hepatitises. And he's like, so you basically got exposed and your body fight it off. That's the only way you could be immune. So in my life, I have a lot of immunities, my body, but I've never, again, cared about germs or sickness. Thankfully, my family is actually really unmerciful when it comes to sickness. And if you get sick, they get more mad at you. You don't get to get out of school. You don't get to get out of activities. They kick you in the ass and say, get out of bed and stop whining. And while that really sucks when you're sick, I'm also grateful because I never developed a relationship with sickness where there was a benefit to me. Where I see a lot of people in my generation developed a relationship with sickness that meant they could get out of work, or they could get out of school, or they could get out of life. So I'm very grateful that my light is developing a light of its own, a mind of its own. Maybe it just died. And that would be a sign that we should. So here's what I'll say. It has not been an easy year. Many things have been cleaned out. Many things have changed in ways I did not expect. My foundational beliefs, though, have adapted to allow for this platform now. The way I'm coming at problems is beginning to come in alignment with that. Not fully, but it's coming. And I'm moving to a new place of understanding this, which is, there's one conversation of like, let's be happy and let me learn how to control my emotional state where I'm happy and can let it in. There's another conversation that I'm about that's beyond that. That's what's the nature of the universe and how does all of this apply to the nature of the universe where I could use it for max capacity, I suppose, or max power, right? If I'm going to be here, like, let's have some fun. Let's get max capacity going. And that's what Jesus was doing, right? Healing people. I don't know about you, but wouldn't it be cool to heal some people? I mean, not that I'm looking to be like a deity prophet. But I'm looking for something fun. I am. Something different. Something, they say there's nothing new under the sun. I want something different. And I think this is the path to it. And the understanding that, what am I trying to get? Things aren't fixed. Things aren't static. It's all perception. And when you get down to it being all particles and waves, when you realize that it's all mind and the way we think about it, emotion, mind, and spirit, that's what I was getting at, right? All the same. Same function, same meaning. When they're talking about particles and waves being reality, they're talking about spirituality. It's vibration, it's waves and particles. What do you think spirit is? So we are seeing spirit. We say, I can't have to see it to believe it. Well, you can't see all that stuff, but we can with microscopes and in certain ways of perception. So it is there. That is science. And we begin to relate that to how we're moving about. So you do have your physicality, but when you begin to realize that physicality is not fixed and it is a result of the mentality, but more importantly, the emotionality. The suppression of emotion in our culture becomes a more highlighted, spotlighted area for power. In fact, it's the biggest, actually, if we were to look at it, it is the point of power and healing. If we can get our emotions on track, if we can be really happier more of the time, which includes not looking at misery, not looking at the horrors of the world, but having but we can't just disregard them. So we can have a new conversation about them that generates hope and light from another space, understanding these principles. So we don't hyper-focus on problems like the war on drugs, which obviously it's only gotten worse since then. So rather than getting hyper-focused on a problem, we understand we need to start a new conversation. We need to soften. And as all of us turn on as bright lights being happier, the whole world would shift naturally because our perception of what's going on would be good. It's like the whole conspiracy theory thing, like that there's 4 people in an office somewhere operating the world, right? This is a very negative way of thinking, and that they're very out to get us and they're going to kill us all. And this is a very negative concept that, whether or not true, is not serving anyone and comes from such a deep base of fear and unhappiness and a need to control, but also a need like mine to understand how it all works. But you have to realize that those conspiracy theories are focusing on the physicality, the power of a man in a building or a person with a gun. These things have no real power of themselves because they are a result of the vibration, the spirituality, the emotionality, the vibrational soup that they're swimming in. So that if you understand that, you can change events by changing the soup they're swimming in. The soup most things are swimming in right now is anger, hate, misunderstanding, fear. Like, we could give it a lot of words. It won't take a lot of happiness, understanding, peace, compassion, joy, and a flat out, when you're in joy, you don't really care what people that are focused on this. Like, there's an element of wanting joy for everyone when we're joyful and not caring about sort of all of these ugly details that lifts everyone up. So for those of us who are focused on making a real difference, we need to change the vibrational soup the world is swimming in, and there's only one way to do that. And that is by you being happy. So it truly is the most important work you have that truly will save the world, or at least potentially from some pain that could be coming in the next decade. The world will always clean itself off, and could start itself over at any time. And since we can go and come back, it's really not that dire. But we are on this world and we do want to see it go well. And I think it is really cool to begin to understand that your emotional state, your belief system, and how you are feeling day to day is very important. And that by you just working to make yourself feeling a little bit better can impact your community, your neighborhood. We don't even realize. So bad things like stealing, murder, and stuff, that happens because the whole vibrational space has dropped to a level where something like that can occur. You don't want crime on your street. Don't start a criminal watch party that's going to go out and get stressed. And start a game night. Get everybody together. Get people out playing. Get happiness. Bring that joy level up. And only joyous things can happen to you. But here's what you have to understand. In the shift, and this is why Abraham, I think, says that when you start to shift, like, things can fall apart. In the shift from going from fear to love, a lot of times something bad does happen in the middle. And we can't use that to balk and turn back to how things were and say, see, this isn't a different way of life. Bad things do happen when I start to be happy. I knew it was true. I need to just stay unhappy. I need to live disappointed rather than be disappointed. That helps to protect me. That's the biggest misperception we have going on. You're not protecting yourself. You are perpetuating the misery. But when you make the shift from like trudging along in misery to asking for joy, because you'll get intermittent pieces of joy, okay? Not everyone's journey has to be like mine. But I'll tell you, having been on it for a year, intermittent, massively bigger highs than I've experienced, but a lot of lows with breakdown, and then sad things that happen, and there's that piece. I do it. I shouldn't be happy. That's what caused my bunny to die. Or as soon as I'm happy, something bad happens, blah, blah, blah. That's just life testing your resolve. And it's also that popping and crackling of the energy as it shifts. You've got to change your soup. And the soup you're swimming in doesn't necessarily want to change. It likes things how it's are. So law of attraction naturally is going to have tragedy happen to try to pull you back, or something that scares you to try to pull you back, because it's a gravitational pull. It's not conscious. It's not saying, I'm going to keep you down. And that's how I take it. I take it personally like it's conscious. But it's not. It's just a gravitational pull saying, hey, you want to move to more joy? You've been living in anxiety for a while. You can't move. I'm going to pull you back. I'm going to pull you back. And that's just that gravitational pull that continues. We can give into it, or we can build resilience. And we can say, you know what? That's just part of it. That's just another opportunity for me to learn to not look at conditions as I move forward. And I'll tell you, trying to not look at a condition like something you love passing, be it a human or a pet or whatever, is very difficult, right? Like, in that moment, you got to let it heal up a little bit. But there is an element of saying, okay, I'm reaching for more. And how can I soften how I feel about this loss using the tools I have that, like, well, death isn't that big of a deal. My bunny is going to come back to play again. We were just having a good time. Everything is temporary, but yet everything is always still happening. So, well, it's sad that experience might have ended. I'm going to have another one. And I can come back and play again. Same time, place, no, but it'll have lots of fun new things. Sorry, my hair's leaving something to be desired, but as I'm moving through these processes, I'm softening and learning to soften the harshness of the feelings around it. And we have to be willing to keep going, and we have to be willing to say, I really am making a difference. Because one bright light that's starting to turn on in a dark room is really bright at first. It gets a lot of attention. But as many lights turn on, the initial one isn't that noticeable. So we have to be willing to start shifting our vibrational soup in certain ways that are very key. Our politicians are doing a good job. People in leadership love us and care for us and are looking out for us. Everything's going to be okay. And we're moving to a better place. And we're moving to a better place together. No one has to die. We don't have to kill off a huge portion of people and how they think, because we never will get rid of people who don't agree with us. In fact, in America, we're supposed to be as passionate about someone else's ability to express their views as our own, even when they're diametrically opposed, because we are supposed, it's the wrong word, but we know the blessing of freedom. And we're at this important crossroads where we have to ask ourselves, do we need the contrast of losing the freedom to realize how important it was? That we would rather have a platform where people can disagree so that we can all express our truth and experience the thriving that comes with freedom to express and live how we each choose? Or we can go through the whole rigmarole again and demand everybody be like us and try to kill everybody else off and then make a society where everyone has to behave the same way, and then everyone will be really unhappy, and then someone can go ahead and rise up and rebel and go, we want freedom, and then they'll reestablish that everyone has equal rights and, everyone should be able to be free the exact same way, and we'll get back to the same conclusion we had with tons of death and destruction and misery, and maybe even the destruction of our planet with the way we like to play around with nukes. Side note, I say, blow up whoever you want, but don't destroy the planet, because some people will still survive and they can reestablish. Don't use nukes. Just get rid of them. And we can blow each other up and the next generation can have their way. But we don't have to go through that process again, because we don't seem to notice that we keep coming to the same conclusion, right? Like, we went through this whole thing with the Holocaust and World War II, and we're like, okay, Jews need to have rights and we need to protect them. And now we're like, screw the Jews. We need to protect the Palestinians, right? But it's the same thing. Both need to be protected. God, a loving God, the same way, is just like a loving parent. You don't play favorites. And that we can accept playing favorites in a loving God, but not in a loving parent, speaks to the ridiculous idea we have of God right now. Again, I only talk about congruency, and there's a space here for complete congruency and logic with science, spirituality, and all of it pointing towards our ability to be happy. And we don't have to tell anybody about it. We just have to do it. That's how the meek inherit the earth. What do you think Jesus was talking about? Those who don't have lofty goals other than just enjoying life. Now that's the Fight Club undercurrent of, vibrational soup shifting that I want to be a part of. Good deeds popping out of nowhere. Someone walking into a Walmart to shoot everyone and suddenly being like, oh my God, the vibe in here is so full of love, I couldn't possibly do this. And them not knowing what's happening, but they just put their guns down and just put their hands up. Because that's completely possible. Those people who go in and do those things have been so isolated and so dark and unloved for so long that this is their extreme cry for help. It's the love that's out. And if we really understood that everyone was creating their own world, we wouldn't need their help to fix ours. We just do it. Cheers. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting excited for the next year.